believe the late Paul Ferguson has joined us. Mr. Ferguson? He just does that so he gets introduced by himself. We all know that today commemorates the D-Day invasion on June 6, 1944. What many people forget is that yesterday commemorated the 75th anniversary of a very important battle, the Battle of Midway. And in that battle, the U.S. Navy sank 4 Japanese aircraft carriers at the loss of 1 aircraft carrier, the Yorktown. And militarily, that was a great victory and a small loss, but not for Joe Fitzpatrick, who was the treasurer of Norfolk. His brother was on the Yorktown, and he went down with it. And it's because of people like that that we're here today. It's now my honor to present retired Commander James Pebley, who will update us on our namesake ship, the USS Arlington. And the USS Arlington was forged in the fires of the Pentagon and Navy pride. Commander Pebley.
Well, good evening. I finally made it to a Historical Society meeting. I'm very proud because this is something I always wanted to go to, and I didn't get confused and think it was a Committee 100 meeting. Frank asked me to talk tonight about the USS Arlington, which I'm just going to call the Arlington, or the ship, save syllables. He said I needed to explain what this ship meant to us and how it relates to the events on the day that war came to our county. We hope to get the ship's captain to speak, but he's busy right now. He is currently piloting that ship, and ocean away, he's going to participate in another historic event, and that was the arrival of Americans 100 years ago in France. How appropriate is that? I accepted the speaking role mainly because I'm a retired Navy officer and because Frank said I had to. Frank's guidance was a bit fuzzier, though, and I asked him what to talk about, and he said, well, the ship, of course, and do it only in 8 minutes. Well, I'll succeed at one and fail at the other, but I've been known for that. So what is a USS Arlington? She's a Navy amphibious combat ship. Let me get technical for a second, get that out of the way. She weighs 25,000 tons. She's 884 feet long. Going downhill, she can giddy up all the way to 25 miles per hour, but she can travel halfway around the world on 1 tank of fuel. She carries 360 sailors and can deliver 700 Marines ashore from an opening in the stern or from the helipad and back, and launch them as far as 200 on helicopters and 600 miles inland. She has 4 engines that turn 2 propeller shafts with 40,000 horsepower. She's 5 stories tall, and when you stand next to her, you start thinking you're very, very small. She can fire missiles at incoming aircraft, or she can shoot down anti-ship missiles with 30-millimeter cannons, firing at a rate of 250 rounds per minute. She's a Navy ship of the line, and if this was the Arlington's baseball card, I just read you the back of it. But you ask, why does she need all of that? Well, the Arlington is designed to project power. That means she can rescue Americans in danger overseas, provide massive humanitarian support to disaster sites, or assist allies when they call for assistance. Here's an example. During the first Gulf War, the presence of amphibious forces and ships offshore of Kuwait tied up about half of Saddam Hussein's army during that war without firing a shot. That's power projection. So why name a ship after our county? Well, it's to honor the namesake of that ship. We're the namesake. It's like this. 1973, the Navy named a frigate the Dory Miller, after an African-American cook who helped rescue his captain from the burning bridge of the USS West Virginia and then fired a .50 caliber machine gun at attacking aircraft in Pearl Harbor in 1941 until he ran out of bullets. The Navy names aircraft carriers after presidents, subs after states, and ships like ours after major cities. But after 9/11, the Navy decided to name one of these San Antonio-class amphibious ships as a tribute to the memories of those lost in New York City and the heroism of their first responders. But they were only going to name one tribute ship. That bothered a lot of us in a few places like Arlington and Somerset County. One man named Mr. Herb Wolk, who was a longtime Navy civilian who lost his son-in-law in the Pentagon attack, decided that wasn't right. So this man started pressing the Navy, this one single man, to name 2 more tribute ships. And while attending a Pentagon Memorial Survivors Group meeting with the Secretary of the Navy, he approached him, grabbed his sleeve, and convinced him to correct the oversight. Through his determination, there are 2 more ships that memorialize those lost in the 9/11 attack, at the 9/11 attack sites, and the Arlington very clearly honors the firemen and policemen of Arlington who came to the aid of our nation's Armed Forces Day. Now think about that. Our first responders helped save those dedicated to protecting us. This wasn't the first ship to honor our county. There are 2 previous ships. The first was a troop transport ship, a steamer that saw action in World War II. The second was an old World War II era aircraft carrier, the USS Saipan. She was reactivated from the mothball fleet in '64 and converted to provide global communications during the Vietnam conflict, and she provided communications support for the Apollo 8 landing in the Pacific. While she only carried our name for a short period, she provided key communications. She wasn't pretty, she wasn't fast, but she did the job until she was decommissioned in '70. If there's anyone interested in the crowd, look up USS Arlington AMGR-2 on the internet. The new Arlington was born in the Huntington Ingalls Shipyard in Pascagoula, Mississippi. In 2008, County Manager Ron Carlee was there and helped lay the keel in a traditional ceremony, making sure the spine on the new ship would be straight. Who would have thought he had chiropractic talents? In March 2011, County Manager Barbara Donnellan and Fire Chief Jim Schwartz, sitting over at the other end there, helped at the christening. They assisted the sponsor, Mrs. Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense then in 9/11, who was the ship's sponsor for our ship. In March 2013, our ship arrived in Norfolk, all brand new with a fresh paint and a new crew and eager to get ready for commissioning her. That's kind of like the Navy's coming out party, only it's a little more formal. When she arrived, there were 2 Arlington fire engine pumpers, a ladder truck, 3 Arlington police cruisers, 2 motorcycles from Arlington, 2 from Fairfax, and the FBI's evidence collection van parked on the pier to greet our ship. Nearly 50 first responders, all in their dress uniforms, were staying at attention at the pier. They all knew that this ship embodied the very essence of the service and sacrifice they provide. The ship's crew, nearly 300 of them, were in dress uniforms lining the rails. When the first line was thrown over the side, the ship's public address system announced shift colors, which in Navy speak means the ship has arrived, and our personnel on the pier came to attention and saluted. Then the crew lining the rail returned their salutes. When the fire and police reached over and turned on their sirens, the ship responded with its gigantic horn, and then all the other ships along the Navy waterfront in Norfolk sounded their horns, saluting our ship for those whose lives are lost and those who dedicate theirs to our safety. The Naval Station Commander, who was standing next to me, told me in his 30 years in the Navy, he had never seen a ship salute that way on arriving in port the first time. At that moment, I understood how service members everywhere, especially as a former Navy man, felt about the Arlington men and women who went to the aid of their comrades on 9/11. After 2 years of passing certifications, qualifications, going in exercises, in 2015, our ship was ready to project the sea power I mentioned before. She made us proud. She had to. She dodged a hurricane while leaving port from Norfolk, sailed across the Atlantic, through the Mediterranean Sea, transited the Suez Canal, made a port turn around Saudi Arabia. Frank, that means she turned to the left. She sailed into the Persian Gulf, and 7 months later, she retraced that route. She operated with 3 different Navy fleets, conducted exercises with the armed forces of over 5 allied navies, the NATO, visited seaports all the way along the way. Her trip over and back with all the diversions along the way covered 36,000 miles in one cruise, and everywhere she sailed with the name of our county in raised steel letters 5 feet high across her stern. She returned to Norfolk in May last year, and once again our first responders were waiting for her at the pier. And once again, our first responders were saluted. That's a lot of accomplishments. But that only covers a fraction of the 40-year life this ship is going to have, carrying our name. Okay, finally a word about how Frank and I became involved in this. In 2012, the county manager, Barbara Donnellan, went looking for a former Navy guy to run a committee to support the ship's commissioning. It seemed somewhere along the line I'd let that slip, but I was a retired Navy officer, so I couldn't refuse. And besides, how hard could that be? I get to go hang around with the Navy, and what a great way to acknowledge our hometown heroes. It was only later I found out that besides helping pay for some ceremonial celebrations, organizing some invitation lists, and helping publish a really slick, nice commemorative magazine, the Navy had set aside a space inside that ship for the building of a tribute room that would tell the story about the Pentagon attack, commemorating those who were lost, and depicting the Arlington County heroes who responded that day. Only the Navy couldn't pay for it. And only then I realized I'd signed on to raise just under $500,000 in donations. The good news was a really sharp police captain, now retired, Kevin Reardon, was on board to help guide me. But hell, I wasn't sure I could raise $1,000 for this, much less keep track of where the damn money was. So I turned to the one guy I knew in the county who could handle money, our treasurer, Frank O'Leary. Little realizing my good fortune because of his talents at knowing how to raise money. Y'all are sitting here as proof. All right, with Frank's help, 16 months later, we raised the money we needed and we accomplished our mission. The ship was commissioned in fine form, tribute room was built, and everyone here owes a debt of gratitude to Frank and Kevin. After the commissioning was over and with the funds we had left over, we formed a successor group, the USS Arlington Community Alliance, to keep those bonds strong. Yes, I'm on the last page, Frank. Between our community and the ship.
This is 8 minutes.
And counting. And while I hate to end this on a somber or even a little bit of maudlin note, I'd have to report that I'm stepping down of the chair of that group, and I'm looking for another Navy man or woman who lives in our county to step into my shoes. I gladly stay on, but due to my impending retirement in September and for some health reasons, my wife and I will be redeploying from Arlington to Wake Forest, North Carolina this summer. House sold Friday. And while I may be separated by some distance here, my heart will always remain in Arlington. My soul will be dedicated to the ship bearing our name. And someday, as a measure of that dedication, I hope in the very far distant future, I'd have the honor to have my ashes dispersed at sea from her stern. So I thank you for listening to this story and how heroism on that awful day in 2001 resulted in the greatest honor the Navy can bestow on any town, city, state, or person who has graced our community. And I thank you very much.
Let me add that 5 years ago, Jim Pebley came to me and said, "Hey, Frank, we got this commissioning committee I'm heading up. You think you can help me raise $500,000? And I said, "Well, Jim, if that'll float your boat." Let me tell you just something about Jim Pebley. He won the highest award that the Arlington Civic Federation offers, and he was just bestowed on, that award was bestowed on him this past spring. And we are going to miss him in Arlington County. He does so much for so many. So Jim, I hate to see you go, buddy. Our next speaker's campaigns have all been political in nature, and he will introduce our primary historian who will share her thoughts on our American military. At this time, I am pleased to present County Board Member John Vihstadt. Mr. Vihstadt.
So I want to, Jim, just strike a personal note here. This was a very touching comment that our former treasurer made, and please know that on behalf of the entire Arlington County Board, we're really going to miss you, and I want you to know that we're going to have some additional task forces and community initiatives that we're going to have to go forward with, and we may need to import some outside talent, so keep that in mind. So, some people deserve short introductions, mostly young people. However, this is a young person who doesn't deserve a short introduction. In fact, she deserves quite a long one. However, the 30-minute introduction that I crafted, Frank, I had to slash to about 2 minutes, so that's all you're going to hear tonight.
You've already used up a minute.
For Allison Sarah Finkelstein. And I'm just going to rattle off a couple of highlights from her resume. Education, University of Maryland, College Park, PhD in history in May 2015, a concentration in historic preservation and U.S. cultural history. Her dissertation, quote, Carry On, American Women and the Veteranist Commemoration of the First World War. No wonder you were selected as the chair of our World War I Commemoration Task Force. Experience. Currently, in her day job, she is U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services historian. She served with the American Battle Monuments Commission here in Arlington, at the Department of Defense Vietnam War Commemoration Program Office. She was served on the Holocaust Educational Trust at the Lord Wandsworth College in Long Sutton, Hampshire, England, just to give you an idea of the diversity of her historic and history experience. The Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. Here's a couple of publications. Quote, A Female Sanctuary on the Former Western Front, the Gold Star Pilgrimage Rest Houses in France. And she was selected to write a chapter on American women in World War I for the joint American Battle Monuments Commission and National Park Service World War I Centennial Commemoration Handbook. Allison, when is that coming out?
It is published now. You can buy it online.
Terrific. Okay. I'm not even going to go through the dizzying array of conference presentations, honors, and awards that are on her resume. But I do want to just conclude with a couple of other items that really demonstrate Allison's commitment to civic engagement and public service. She serves on the United States World War I Centennial Commission, which is really kind of the mother organization of our own Arlington group. And finally, the Society of the Honor Guard, the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. Dr. Finkelstein is truly history personified.
Well, thank you, Mr. Vihstadt, for that extremely generous introduction. I am thoroughly embarrassed now in front of everybody. I also want to thank Chief Schwartz, who is here tonight. He's our county staff liaison, and he will be speaking after me. And also a big thank you to the Arlington Historical Society for inviting me to speak tonight, especially my fellow task force member, Frank O'Leary, who got me to be here. I am really honored to speak with you all, and I'm excited to work alongside the Society. As you just heard, I am here this evening as the chair of the Arlington County World War I Commemoration Task Force, and I would like to begin my remarks by briefly explaining our mission and outlining our plans. the Arlington County Board formed our task force to develop a plan for commemorating World War I in our community, and also to really coordinate the county's recognition of this significant anniversary. In our first few months, we have outlined 3 major goals. First, we intend to engage the community with the historical significance of America's involvement in World War I, as well as the more specific story of Arlington County during the war. Second, we plan to collaborate with other local organizations on commemorative events and programs, like the one you are at right now. And third, we want to work with a diverse group of community stakeholders to discuss ways to interpret the history of the Clarendon War Memorial. With these 3 goals in mind, we are developing an exciting schedule of events through November 2018. I look forward to working with the Arlington Historical Society on many of these programs, and I welcome ideas from the community as we move forward. And just to give you an idea of how key the Arlington Historical Society has already been to the task force's work, several members, Frank, Annette Benbow, who is here somewhere, probably hiding, have been really providing a lot of support to us. They have a lot of expertise on the subject of the county during World War I, so I'd like to thank them as well. I now want to shift my focus to the main substance of my remarks this evening, which is going to be a short reflection on the power of people and the power of place in military commemoration. This theme seemed especially fitting for this event because people and places are so critical to the work of local historical groups like the Arlington Historical Society. I also chose this theme to correspond with the focus of this gala, a salute to our military and first responders. For Arlington County, with our large population of military members, veterans, first responders, and their families, this gala's theme is a very appropriate way to connect our local history to the community while also recognizing the ongoing World War I centennial. Although some of our nation's military commemorations may seem to focus on events, wars, and anniversaries, it's really people, ordinary Americans, who are truly the heart of these commemorations. And I think we know this in part because Memorial Day and Veterans Day so aptly acknowledge the importance of people. And I really believe that it's important to remember this as we pursue our military commemorations. And I'm going to encourage our task force to find ways to keep people at the forefront of our agenda, especially Arlingtonians past and present. During the Memorial Day ceremony at the Clarendon War Memorial last week, Mr. Dan Donahue, a task force member representing American Legion Post 139, along with his colleagues, exemplified the importance of the power of people in commemorations by reading the roll call of the names of the World War I dead listed on the Clarendon Memorial. It was, to me, a deeply stirring and meaningful experience to hear those men's names read over a microphone in the heart of Clarendon. As people ate brunch at the nearby restaurants across the street or walked through the busy intersection, these names invaded their space and forced them to notice the ceremony. And I even saw several passersby actually stop to briefly join the audience at the ceremony. They clearly recognized the importance of the event. It's moments like these that focus on individual people that make commemorations so relevant to society. And for me, although I study commemoration from a more academic perspective, people are really what drive my dedication to this topic. My dad is a retired Army officer who instilled in me an appreciation for the importance of military commemoration from an early age. I grew up also enthralled by the stories that my 2 grandfathers told me about their World War II service. And as an adult, I was really fortunate to be able to conduct 2 oral histories with each of them. My grandpa George served as a radio repairman in the Army Signal Corps in Europe. The story of how his service helped him forge a very successful career in electronics and technology epitomizes the way that service members can take their wartime skills and re-enter the civilian workforce. It's his experiences that remind me to recognize the post-war achievements of our veterans as part of the memorialization process. And today, on the 73rd anniversary of D-Day, I especially want to mention and honor my grandpa Lou, who served as a Navy seaman gunner first class on Omaha Beach during the first waves of the Normandy invasion. During the invasion, he was severely injured when a German shell hit his LCVP. He suffered from the physical and emotional wounds of that day for the rest of his life, although my family never really knew how much until his final years. And I'd like to share with you a quote today from that oral history I conducted with him in 2008. I think his words really capture how those young men must have felt in the days leading up to the Normandy invasion. He described to me how, on June 4th, quote, "That night there was a microphone opened up, PA system, and Eisenhower made his speech, and they gave us these so-called letters about the invasion. And we knew, and we just waited." It is quotes like this one from my grandpa Lou that bring to life the raw emotions felt by those whose service we commemorate. The stories of our veterans and their experiences take military commemorations out of the history textbooks and translate them into terms that our community can understand. But it's also the power of place that can help us express the importance of military commemorations to our fellow community members. As a scholar, I'm often talking about sites of memory, places where historical memories are rooted in a location, like a cemetery, a battlefield, or a memorial. For many people, and perhaps some of you have experienced this, visiting sites of memory elicits an emotional response. These places make long ago events seem closer to our modern lives. And here in Arlington, as we've already heard today, we are surrounded by sites of memory from almost every era of American history. The local connections between Arlington and World War I will enable our task force to engage the community in a distinct and impactful way. Although we are an ocean away from the Western Front, we are home to several sites central to the national memory of the American experience in World War I, chiefly, as you all know, Arlington National Cemetery and the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, located on a hilltop within its grounds. And their significance to World War I is so important that I can't even begin to touch upon it in my short remarks today. So don't worry, Frank. I'm not going there. We'll save it for another time. I'm going to stick to my time limit. But you all are well aware of that. And you also know that millions of people visit our county each year to make a pilgrimage to these sites. So by commemorating World War I, we are fulfilling a duty incumbent upon our county as the home to these sacred places. And with the installation of the new World War I exhibit at Arlington National Cemetery in the Visitor Center, our county now also hosts an exhibit that connects Arlington National Cemetery to the American World War I sites overseas and provides visitors with an educational introduction to the war that they might not get in their hometowns. But despite these national shrines located in our county, we're also still a lot like other localities that pride themselves on their local connections to World War I. We have a memorial marker to our county's World War I dead in Cherrydale, erected by the Daughters of the American Revolution in 1925, as well as the Clarendon War Memorial, dedicated by American Legion Post 139 on Armistice Day in 1931. These memorials exemplify the way that Americans memorialized World War I at a local level through grassroots projects based in their communities. And these were often led by local veterans groups and especially women's organizations. Memorials like these can be found in towns and cities across America. But like other similar memorials, the Clarendon War Memorial in particular also reveals the racial divisions of America's World War I experience through the segregation of the names on the World War I plaque. During the centennial period, we have an opportunity to use this memorial as a way to investigate the war's racial legacy. And it is my hope that we can all come together as a community to figure out a way to interpret this memorial by placing it within the larger context of World War I. To conclude, I hope my reflection on the power of people and the power of place in military commemorations has given you some insight into the ways that our county can approach memorialization projects. For the World War I centennial in particular, I am confident that the talents and contributions of the Arlington Historical Society will help our task force in our mission to honor World War I in our community and to engage our citizens with this important centennial. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. That was wonderful. You know, we're talking about the day war came to Arlington, but Allison made me think about all those from Arlington who went to war. If things are working right, where's my Annette? The guy you see on the big screen was my father. This took place in the Korean War. He was a battalion commander, tank battalion. His battalion was hit by a Chinese division. And there then ensued a 3-day battle, a very desperate battle, hand-to-hand combat. And at the end of the 3 days, I'm happy to report that my dad's unit had won. They were awarded the Presidential Unit Citation for their accomplishment, and my dad received a Silver Star. So here's looking at you, Dad. Thanks. September 11, 2001 is a date inscribed forever in our memories. For Arlington's first responders, it was their finest hour. At this time, it is my honor to present former Fire Chief James Schwartz to share his thoughts of that day. Chief Schwartz.
Thank you, Frank, and thanks to the Historical Society for putting on this event. Frank, everybody knows you can fill a room. It doesn't take too much, but your word to put 200 people, 200 of your best friends in the room, and it's remarkable to see everybody out here this evening, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm not going to talk a lot about the day of 9/11, not least of which because I only have 8 minutes, and Pebley took 6 of those. But the Historical Society did a wonderful thing 2 years ago, I think. I'm looking at John Richardson when we did a recording telling the story of the experience at 9/11. And so that exists somewhere in your archives and is probably available in Rob's archives also. What I do want to talk just a little bit about is, not just the experience of 9/11, but why 9/11, not why it happened here, but the specialness with which this community connected with the responders that day. That was an event almost 17 years ago that was of national, even international significance. And one of the reasons that we were able to perform the way that we did was because of the support that we have in this community, the support that we had before September 11th, and certainly the support that we have enjoyed. As I look around this room, many people have come to advocate, for our public safety agencies here in the county over many, many years. And the general support in the community, recognizing the importance of public safety and what we do on a daily basis, has always been very heartening to somebody like me who spent 32 years in the fire service. Since the theme tonight is both military and first responders, I will share with you that very early in my tenure as chief of department, I appropriated a practice that I came to understand the Navy used, and that was when a new commander took over a ship, he was expected to produce something called a compass. And the compass was a written document that laid out what the commander believed, what the crew could expect of the commander, what the commander would expect of the crew, and then a fourth area of something called non-negotiables. These are the things that, as your senior leader, I simply will not tolerate amongst our organization. I took that practice and I did it in the Arlington County Fire Department. And I'm not going to go through any of that except the very first thing that I put on what I believe, my very first top line on what I believe, and it came to be a line that I used over and over and over again during my tenure as chief, and that is that this was a great way to spend a life. This was a great way to spend a life. And you people in this community made that so for me. You made my 32 years here as chief, or rather in the fire department, incredibly rewarding. I couldn't think of working in a different place. In fact, I came here from another fire department because I thought so much of this community before I was actually hired on to the department. I will tell you that in the last almost 2 years of my new job, I'm still asked frequently how I like the new job, and my standard response, but it is very heartfelt, is not as much as I like the last one. But the work of our emergency services, our police department, our fire department, our sheriff's office, our Office of Emergency Management, our Emergency Communication Center, is made easier when we do it with the kind of love and support that we have in this community. And so I thank you all for that very, very much. One other thing that I will observe about Arlington that makes it very special is that despite our size, when you look at us in the context of the National Capital Region, we can easily fall in the shadow of a Fairfax County or a Washington, D.C. But this community punches way above its weight, way above its weight. We have influence that goes far beyond our size. That's certainly been true in public safety over many, many years. People remember 9/11. What they may not remember is an event that happened back in, actually two events that happened back in 1995. The Murrah building bombing in Oklahoma City, and then a more obscure event for most people here in the United States, and that was a terrorist attack on the Tokyo subway, where the Aum Shinrikyo religious cult mixed up a batch of chemical warfare agent and released it in the subway on a rush hour morning. The batch of sarin wasn't done very well, so it didn't kill a lot of people, but still precious lives. The combination of Oklahoma City and the Tokyo subway attack got us to thinking about terrorism as a threat here in our community. And Arlington was the one that literally took the task of writing a letter to the President of the United States. We wrote a letter to President Clinton that said, if that event had occurred here, if the Tokyo event had occurred here, in the subway on which you depend to move your workforce on a daily basis, your federal workforce uses that subway to get to do its business and serve the people of this country. We're not ready. We don't have the equipment, we don't have the training, we don't have the knowledge. And the President ordered the Department of Health and Human Services and eventually the U.S. Public Health Service to work with Arlington and our partners in the National Capital Region. And the result of that was the nation's very first non-military counterterrorism team, on whom the federal government called for over 15 years to be forward deployed on dozens of national special security events. When the president was inaugurated, part of that team was underneath the platform that's built out over the east steps of the Capitol. Our job was to go out and rescue the people that were on that platform. When the president went to a joint session of Congress, the State of the Union address, we were in a conference room underneath the House chamber, half suited up in protective equipment, ready to go up a very narrow, winding stairway into the House chamber, and our mission was to save the legislative leadership of the United States Congress. The reliance that the federal government had on local government, led primarily by Arlington County, was remarkable, largely because you people supported those efforts. We presented ourselves as leaders in the realm of public safety, but we did it knowing that you stood behind us. Today, Arlington County stands as a leader in a domain that may not mean much to many people in this room, but as you've watched the terrorist threats that we have faced over the course of the last couple of years, and I'm speaking about Paris and Brussels and Nice and Berlin, something that we call complex coordinated attacks. It is Arlington County fire and police departments that have pioneered what we refer to as warm zone medicine, which is taking care of wounded people before the threat is eliminated. Fire and police working in the same environment to get in and get the wounded the kind of care that they need so that we can stop the dying and they can live. That effort, just like that effort of that counterterrorism team, that counterterrorism team's effort was repeated in 124 cities across the United States. And today, hundreds of communities are copying the efforts that Arlington have pioneered around response to these kinds of threats. So we are a unique kind of community. We are a unique kind of set of agencies. But again, we could not do that without all of the support that you provide to us. Thank you very much. It's been a wonderful way to spend my professional life. I'll take 2 more minutes and I want to share one more thing with you, Annette, if you'll bring up that next picture. This is a concept drawing of something that we've been working on for a couple of years right now. We refer to it as a tribute garden. Some of you may know that a couple of years ago, the Fire Department of New York drove in a very long procession that was covered by national media to bring steel from the World Trade Center to present to the Arlington County Fire Department. And we also have 3 blocks of Pentagon stone. I should tell you that the City of New York Fire Department also has Pentagon stone. And so in 2 places there are the steel from New York and the stone from the Pentagon. And we intend here in Arlington to bring these artifacts together in a tribute garden. Now, I want to be very clear. This is not a memorial. The memorial to the 9/11 experience is down by the Pentagon, which, by the way, as history buffs, if you haven't visited, you're doing yourself a huge disservice because it is a powerful, powerful monument, a powerful memorial. I would just make this observation. In the National Capital Region, we have dozens, if not hundreds, of memorials and monuments. None of them are on the location where the event they commemorate took place, except the 9/11 memorial. But we don't want to build another memorial. What we want to do is build a tribute garden that, through the power of that steel and that stone, tell the story of brother and sisterhood shared between Arlington responders and New York responders on that very important day in our nation's history. So look forward very soon to us rolling out this concept, to engaging in some additional dialogue about what this finally looks like, and hopefully to do some fundraising so that we can make this tribute garden a reality. Thank you all very much.